Hello, SAP. We have Dr. Jerrold Shapiro here with our division's Who's Who, and we're very excited to have Dr. Shapiro here. Thank you for being here with us. This is just a wonderful way for our members to learn about the incredible things that our other members are doing. So let's just dive right in. Can you tell me more about your educational background and your professional experience?
Okay, so I went to Boston Latin School for high school. Um, I went to Colby College in Waterville, Maine. I was graduate in 1964. 1964. I know what you were thinking. Um, I did a master's at Northwestern. That would have been 1967, and then I did a doctorate at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, 1970, PhD. Um, did my internship. I'll tell you a story about that, but did my internship at Hawaii State Hospital in Kaneohe, Hawaii. Um, Basically, at the time, I was at Northwestern. We were told we could intern anywhere in the country with an APA approved program. And they talked about people going as far away as St. Louis, Missouri, or Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I went to Hawaii, um, which was, a life changing experience, which I'll be glad to get into later if you'd like to pursue that. I've been teaching psychotherapy since 1969. Um, I was an assistant professor and had a clinical practice in Olean, New York. I taught at St. Bonaventure University for a year. Then I returned to Hawaii and taught for a dozen years at the University of Hawaii. I was a visiting professor at UC Santa Cruz for 1 year. I exchanged my jobs. I traded with a professor there. It
Cool.
was really fun.
I bet.
Um, um, and then I've been at Santa Clara University since 1982. Clinical psychologist from 69 to the basically present, although I'm now retired from practice. Licensed in 1974. Um, I consulted with the U.S. Air Force in the Pacific for the better part of the 70s and been a consultant to family businesses for a long, long time.
Wonderful. It seems like your clinical career and your training brought you all over the world. That is incredible.
Well, at least to Asia.
Yeah. And Hawaii and Canada, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
now I need to hear the story about internship.
Um, I was very unhappy at Northwestern.
Hmm.
It was one of those graduate programs that was a bad fit for them and for me. Um, they also had a kind of a cutthroat ambiance that I had lived through in high school. My high school graduated one out of six people who went there.
Wow.
Everyone else went to other high schools, you know, when they failed out. So it was very cutthroat, and I really needed to get away from that. I did at Colby. Colby was a wonderful experience. Um, and then there was an opportunity at Northwestern. I took it, and it was cutthroat again. They said they would graduate half of the doctoral class, which is I don't know. It just wasn't me at the time. And so I really wanted a break, and I saw this internship in Hawaii, and I went for it. And it was absolutely life changing. I landed in Honolulu. I was still in the airport, and I felt, oh, this is where I belong.
Wow.
I mean, it was just an amazing experience. Of course, the wafting of plumeria um, aromas helped a lot. Um, and I just fell in love with the place. I think it's still my emotional home. My wife and I met there, you know, and the internship was amazing. At Northwestern, it was pure behavioral. The internship at Hawaii was pluralistic.
Mm.
So we got to try everything, and it was lovely.
Yeah, that me to we shift. That's incredible. So, what even inspired you to become a psychologist to begin with?
So there's a long story and a short story. Um, I'll give you the long story first,
Please.
or I should say a simple and a complicated one. So as a kid, I often saw the world a little differently from my peers.
Mm,
Um, I had more questions, particularly about authority. All I needed to hear was someone say, "This is the way it is." And I would start thinking, well, is it really?
mm,
Maybe it isn't. Um, and I came into the field as a person who was curious all my life. Um, I was intrigued by taking a different perception, starting from a different assumption. My fictional hero growing up was Perry Mason because he always started with a different assumption, and then everything followed from there. And I did that a lot going through school and as a kid. Um, a second influence growing up was baseball. I played baseball up and into college and then stopped then. Um, and there was something about that if you got it right one time out of three, you were successful. And it wasn't about perfection.
mm.
And something about that was very appealing. So, that's kind of the complicated answer. The simple answer, and probably the more important one, was I got to meet Viktor Frankl as a freshman in college.
Wow.
And Colby had a person of the year who came every year, and then we were assigned their book over the summer. Well, this is before my freshman year. Um, we were assigned what was then called From Death Camp to Existentialism.
Mm,
Didn't sell that much. Someone changed the title, didn't change a word in the book, to Man's Search for Meaning, one of the most successful books in history. Um, but I had this experience sitting in a large lecture hall, probably five, 600 people, that he was talking through me instead of to me. It was just a life-changing experience. And I spent the rest of he was there for a week. I spent the rest of the week kind of following him around like a puppy, and I wasn't the only one that had that experience. One of my peers at Colby also became an existential psychotherapist.
mm.
Um, so he had a phenomenal um, influence. That was followed, and that's what got me going in the field. But that was followed many years later, actually, by two more opportunities to hang out with him.
Wow.
And one of them through just a series of serendipitous events, which I think defines my life, actually, chance things that occurred. Um, I had a chance to have dinner with him several times over the course of a, 2 to 3 month period. And it was just lovely. It was amazing. And I discovered what I had always believed, but found rarely to be the case, that the person who was writing and the person who he was were identical.
Yeah.
There wasn't that, oh, I'm writing this, but I'm really like this. He just was, that's who he was. And it was an amazing experience. I also had a unique experience that I understood a little Yiddish.
Mm,
And at times we could talk in Yiddish. And that really, he clearly loved that,
mm,
right? And one of the experiences, just about a year prior to his passing, we gave him an honorary degree at Santa Clara. And I thought, gee, I'm going to go out. He's not going to remember me, but I'm going to go out and just greet him outside the place where he was going to talk. So I went out, and he sees me and he calls to me in Yiddish. He uses a Yiddish term to call to me. And, I immediately responded and we started a chat. So we're jabbering away in this weird language. And the president of the university, it's a Catholic Jesuit university, the president of the university, Father Locatelli, was standing there, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, um, beautifully kind and patient, but not knowing what to do or say. Well, yeah, because he's trying to introduce him into the lecture hall, So that was really fun. Um, and then I saw him the next day. He was doing a special talk at San Jose State, which is just down the road from us. And it's the last time I saw him before he passed. but tremendous influence on my life. I mean, just a gigantic influence. Um, I still teach existential psychotherapy, and it's my work was always based in part on Frankel's his work and his being.
Mm.
So, I had a real live hero there. It wasn't like Perry Mason.
Yeah, there we
In
go.
fact, it was probably my first real life hero who didn't play third base.
Did you play third base?
But
Did you play third base when you did
I
baseball?
played third and I pitched, but
Yes.
Frankel was not a baseball player.
Right, right. It sounds like equally as, or even more so, impactful on your life and your career. So you
Yeah.
have done so many different things with your career. What would you say are common misconceptions in psychotherapy?
So psychotherapy is a very, very big umbrella. And we use the same term for all kinds of things, all kinds of interventions, all kinds of approaches, all kinds of theories. And because it's such a wide umbrella, people within it have very discrepant approaches and goals. You have the theories that are symptom driven and technique oriented, like CBT, for example. Then you have other theories that are more like life changing, um, the more psychodynamic, certainly the existential fit in there. And because everyone's under the same tent, they seem to have these internecine wars about who's number one, whose theory is the best, which one is the true theory. And I think the biggest misconception is that we're going to answer that. We're going to answer that question. Pluralism is the way to go. Is understanding there are so many approaches and so many ways of doing therapy. It always reminds me of that parable of the seven blind men, each one trying to describe the elephant from a different point of view. Um, and so, I think we need to be very clear about where we're starting and where we're going, but it isn't necessarily the answer. And in fact, and this is something I actually said this at a meeting once, and um, one person in the audience actually used the term heresy in responding. I thought I was so proud. Um, but I believe deeply that we don't pay it. This is one of the big misconceptions. We don't pay attention to the client's theories of change. Um, I believe intensely that there are psychodynamic clients and CBT clients and humanistic clients and therapists who try to force their clients into the therapist's way of thinking really isn't paying attention to who the clients are. And I think if you match up the CBT clients with the CBT therapists, it works out pretty darn well. But if you match up a CBT client with an existential therapist, right? And so I think we don't pay enough attention to who the client is, right? And that's when I say the client, I'm talking about the client in their complete living context, socioculture, cultural clients, socioeconomic realities that they live with, um, just the ways of thinking, the ways of being. Um, so I think Chapman, in a popular book, captures some of that with his love languages notion in looking at couples that, people who are very loving express it in different ways and they just don't get responded to because it's not coming in the way it's quote supposed to be.
That makes so much sense to me that it's not necessarily about the efficacy of the approach, but if it works for the client, if it matches with
Yeah.
them. Oh,
Yeah. And just to continue with that, we focus so much on what we call evidence-based treatment, evidence-based therapy. I think Norcross is more correct with evidence-based relationships.
mm,
But even so, I've always challenged my colleagues to this with regard to evidence. I've said, listen, you give me control over the instruments of measurement. I just want control over the measuring stick. I'll get the results that I want. And people get angry at that. I think Kaplan first talked about that in 1964, calling it the law of the instrument.
Hmm.
But you know, so much of the studies that are done in universities um, are really problematic because the instruments are matched to their theories.
Right.
So of course they get the data they want. Bottom line, every major theory has really good evidence. They've lasted that long. Of course, people are also inventing brand new theories all the time, mostly those that George Kelly talked about in the 1930s. you know, um, but I guess that's okay. I guess that's okay. Um, I've done both kinds of work. I've done quantitative work. I did series of studies on group therapy with random assignment and multiple measures throughout the 70s looking at group therapy with nice results. But they're all quantitative and they are all basically black box research. This is where they started, the client started, this is where the clients ended, but
Right.
not much talk about what was going on inside. And so over the latter part of my career, past 35 years or so, I've been doing much more looking at the internal parts of what constitutes therapy.
Oh.
I think I've drifted from your question, but
No, but how powerful to explore the process of psychotherapy rather than the outcome of psychotherapy.
right. And the quantitative forms of research, which are valuable, um, all follow from a medical model and drug companies,
Mm.
right? Double blind studies, randomization. Um, but the father of modern medicine, right, Sir William Osler, said that the good physician treats the client with the symptom, not the symptom.
Mm.
So I don't know if you've been in hospitals much or been around much, but very often they'll talk about, the broken leg in room 26,
Right.
as if if the leg existed without the person who had the broken leg. Right. So anyhow, I think that's kind of a roundabout answer. If I've missed part of it, just ask me again.
No, no, that was incredibly. I also I just want to name. I feel I took HLP about 2 years ago, and you are making me brush up all of my studying with the language and studies that you're citing. So you were just a wealth of information. So then, what would you say is the most rewarding part of this work?
Um, Having an impact on the lives of others, having an impact on clients and seeing their lives get better, having an impact on students over the years. I mean, I've been teaching grad students since 1969. Um, and I love seeing that metaphorical light go on over someone's head, the like cartoon. I love that. I love seeing them try things and the insights that come up and how people operate. And all of a sudden, it's like there's a difference. You know, it may not be a difference in what they're doing, although sometimes it is, of course. It may be a difference in how they experience it, but it's always that difference is terrific. I, Perhaps the most rewarding part beside that is the feeling that I've been able to be creative through my writing and through my and clinical work is I mean I love that. It's so creative. Um, so I could never be a technician. Could never do that. Um, I also love being part of a team with my colleagues. Um, I'm in a very fortunate situation at Santa Clara. I've got fabulous colleagues. There's no rift in our department. I don't even know that you can call it a psychology department because people get along so
Wow.
well.
Yeah.
um, and the department has been built specifically pluralistically. We don't have an orthodox theory. Every professor brings something different, and we respect them all. I love that experience. I love being part of a team. I mean, that also fits my baseball stuff and playing basketball, and I really like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I also enjoy the ability to study. I mean, psychology is so wonderful because I've been able to study whatever my interest was in whatever way I want, right? I wasn't locked in. So, that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So then what would you say is the most unexpected part of your work?
Um, Now, I was a first generation college student in my family, the extended family, actually. And when I went to school, everything seemed open.
Hmm.
It just seemed open. Um, I've always been able to just kind of do what I wanted to do. Now, the most unexpected part in some ways, well, there are two. There are two. Um, One is um, I like working under the radar,
Hmm.
right? I like, doing my work, you know, kind of not asking a whole lot of permission questions,
Yeah.
but just kind of doing what I want to do and try to work on it. And then when it's done, here it is. Um, Somehow, in the course of the 1980s, I became popular.
Hmm.
I mean, and that was a real unexpected thing. And all of a sudden, I was talking about, the research I was really important to me on fatherhood,
Yeah.
which of course was propelled by the fact that I was becoming a father, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up on all those morning shows on TV and Oprah and just a whole bunch of things and a couple of hundred newspapers, and it was like, my goodness, how did it was fun doing it, but it was so alien in some ways to how I usually am. I mean, if I go to a party and I don't know anybody, I'm the person who's leaning, my back is against the wall, trying to increase the size of the room.
Mm. Yeah.
Right. Now, if I know my role, I can like this, I can play.
Right.
But the other thing is that I have been very lucky. I've been very fortunate. You mentioned my travels. You know, things happen by accident, and I was able to say, "Oh, I'd like to try that," right? And because of baseball, sometimes it worked out and sometimes it didn't. But it didn't. It was fine if it didn't work out sometimes,
Right.
right? But it did so often. I've made just some very fortuitous choices. Um, you know, Northwestern was saying we could do an internship anywhere, and they talked about the Midwest, right? When I was growing up, it was never expected that I would leave the Boston area,
Yeah.
right? I mean, not a whole wrong with Boston, a lot wrong with Boston, but it isn't Honolulu, and it was like that's where I wanted to be. You know, deciding to switch. I was ABD when I switched doctoral programs.
Wow.
And that was I mean, it was because of what I was learning in Hawaii. It was a different culture and a different way of looking at things. Hawaii is amazing culturally because there's no majority group,
Mhm.
right? And so you have to learn how and get excited about how other people do things. What could be better for psychotherapy, right? And then Waterloo offered me the same thing in my doctorate there. Um, I was very fortunate to meet my wife when I did. We're 44 years plus now, and
Congrats.
um, you know, it's just lovely. It's just lovely. Um, I got to be a dad, right? So there are all kinds of choices that, like I said, I think an awful lot of it was good luck. I mean, I'm still dealing with an injury I had playing baseball in 1961, but hey, uh, but just good fortune, and a lot of close friends, um, and just kind of something flowed down the river, and I said, I think I'll take one of those. You know, I for the same reason I like dim sum restaurants.
Mm. Choice. Yeah.
They come by with the carts, right?
So, what would you say is your hope for the future of psychotherapy or the field of psychotherapy? What direction would you want it to see go?
Well, I think the best thing with regard to psychotherapy is my students
Mm.
becoming therapists. Although, frankly, it's a little daunting that an awful lot of my former students have retired.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's, but I think what's coming, and I think it's really important, is that with video-based therapies like Zoom that we're on right now, but therapy over telehealth or Zoom, and AI-based therapy is coming. It's here already to some extent, and because it's expanding so rapidly, um, people who do so the need for in-person symptom-oriented technique-based therapies is in trouble. People who do that kind of therapy are going to be struggling to beat the convenience, the quote convenience of AI, and AI has lots of problems, right? But it keeps evolving, and I think if you're dealing with simple phobias, and although I've never actually met one of those, I read about them in the research, but clinically, you know, um, but so the need for that is going to diminish, which means that my hope is, and I think this is happening already, there's going to be greater opportunity for more personalized therapy, right? More therapy that is based on changing people's lives as opposed to certain behavioral interventions. Not that those don't change person's lives. I mean, people are suffering from something and they can help reduce it or eliminate it. That can be life changing as well. But I think the more personalized therapy, where therapists are working much more from within the client and within the client's cultural sense and within the client's being, those kinds of therapies are going to soar. So I think that's the biggest hope. I believe that intimacy is the antidote to fears of mortality,
Mm.
and most other issues that people are dealing with um, can be healed with relationship. And so those kinds of therapies, very important. And working with someone of a different culture, for example, um, which is practically everybody when you think about it, but working with someone from a different culture entails understanding human universals, who that person is in their culture, what their culture dictates. If they're in North America and they come from a different country, what level of acculturation and assimilation, because those are so different, right? And so, you know, I loved something about Hawaii and Canada both, and that is the metaphor for being a citizen there is not the melting pot. It's not the soup metaphor. It's the chopped salad metaphor,
Mm. Yeah.
where everyone maintains their independent kind of way of doing things, but you still put them together, and it's better. It's better when it's together, but it isn't, melted all together. It's the individuality exists with in addition to the commonality. That's incredibly important, and I think psychotherapy going in that direction, understanding how people connect and how they're different and they're together. I think that's what a lot of what the future looks like in some ways.
Yeah. So you've done so much. So this question almost feels silly, but what are your future plans?
The eternal question: what am I going to be when I grow up?
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. So I just finished my 20th book, got published this summer
Congrats.
on, I co-authored it with four of my grad students, which I'm very proud of. Um, and it's on couple therapy with clients, with couples, couple therapy with clients from traditional Asian cultures living in North America.
Mhm.
And we were able, because of the students' capacities, they all come from some of these cultures. They were able to interview people and do research in the traditional languages.
Wow.
And so, like the research they were doing is studies that have never been published in English. The interviews they were doing were done in those languages. And I think the book, I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy with it. And it also gets me back to some of my Hawaii roots of working in
Right.
multicultural Asian, right? Um, and you know, that's really exciting. I don't know if I'm going to pursue that further. My hope is that the students will,
Mm.
that they'll take it and run with it, and then I can, back away. I'm working on a couple therapy book with Terry Patterson where we're looking at those arguments that people have that never go away, those
Mm.
repetitive arguments that people don't even know what they're fighting about, like which way the toilet roll goes, or how to squeeze the toothpaste tool tube, or the big one, how to load the dishwasher, right? Or when do you give Christmas presents? Christmas Eve or Christmas Day?
Ooh, yeah.
I know. You see, I
Yeah.
caught you on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
in my family, since my husband is Air Force, we don't celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. So it's a toss up for us.
Okay. 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 Where is he stationed?
We're actually in St. Louis, so it's funny that
Okay.
you
Okay.
mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I love working with the Air Force.
They're wonderful. Yeah.
Some of the best people I ever met in my life. Yeah. Um, I'm also completing a manuscript right now with Art Bohart and Karen Tallman
Oh,
on the core processes in therapy, mostly looking at how clients and therapists co-create the therapy. Kind of an interesting perspective. They come from a client-centered um, background, so we're putting it together, and we're pretty much done with that manuscript. Um, so I don't know where I'm going next, right? Um, I've been doing research most of my life, right? When I did group therapy because I was really into groups. When my wife got pregnant, I was obsessed with becoming a father and then fatherhood. I got into that. I've been into life transitions for a long time. Um, so I've done, studies and a couple of books on that title "Finding Meaning, Facing Fears," looking at the midlife to retirement section of life. So I don't know what's coming next. I'm only 82, so I don't really know what's going to pique my interest next. I
how
mean,
exciting.
maybe I'm just still the kid looking at the world from a slightly unconventional perspective. I don't think I've totally given up on the dream that the Major League Baseball is going to call. Um,
My fingers are
that
crossed
was a
for you.
career. That was a career for which I was over enthusiastic and under talented. So I think that's what I don't know what's coming next. I've got winter quarter off, so I might find out.
Wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
how exciting. That was all of my questions. Do you have any last, we have about 3 minutes left. Any last
Okay. Three
comments?
minutes. Oh my God.
I know.
Life in 3 minutes. Um, I think the more we have opportunities to be more intimate with our clients' lives as therapists, um, more connected with them in their way of doing things, in their thinking, in their styles. Uh, Therapy for me is about process. It's relationship and process. And so I'm not as tied into or interested in what people say as much as I am how they say it and the kind of, what's going on in their world, which I find endlessly fascinating. I mean, you talk about a great career for someone who always wants to look at things in new ways. I mean, every client, brings you such an amazing wealth of treasure. I've worked with people who played in symphonies, right? And we talked about music, and it was so thrilling. And I worked with a pipe fitter once. I have no idea what that is.
Oh.
No, I'm joking. But it was someone who was a pipe fitter in the Navy, and then was struggling because it was it was hard to find a position
Right.
post Navy. But I thought at one point I could go to a pipe fitters convention if they had such things, and I thought I could pass.
I'm sure. Yeah.
You know, and I work with weavers. I mean, it's like it's so amazing because they're things I never would have done in my own life. So
Right.
yeah,
There's
I
so
think
much.
that's a good place to stop.
Yeah, there's so much novelty. Well, thank you so much for all of this. This was incredible, and I'm very excited for our members to be able to learn from you and hear your stories and your career and your hopes for the field. I know that we'll get great feedback from it.
Yeah, well, thank you. You're a marvelous interviewer.
Thank you.